There we go. All right, so welcome today to the webinar. If you're not familiar with Kiefer Consulting, we do these webinars every month. We try to cover a lot of range of different topics, and this month we're covering the 5 signs that your workflow needs improving. And today I'm actually joined by one of our consultants. Sometimes we get to bring somebody in and who has a lot of experience out there in the field, who's able to kind of share some stories, give a little bit of context to the slides here. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off and introduce the panel. And but before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and get you some orientation here. Over on the side panel in GoToWebinar, there is a section for questions. So while we're doing this presentation today, if you have any questions that come up, please do enter those into the panel, and we'll actually try to get to those at the end. This presentation will probably go somewhere between 30 and 35 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. If you got questions throughout the presentation, just go ahead and drop them in there. All right, and if you may have gotten an email from me this morning. I did send some resources out. We may talk a little bit about those today in this presentation. If you haven't received those from me yet, you will be getting them from me after today's presentation. All right, so let's move on here. All right, so real brief introductions. We're going to start with brief introductions. I will introduce Nick, and we'll do a couple minutes about Kiefer so that some of the folks on the phone have an opportunity to get familiar with who we are and what we do. I won't spend too much time with that. And then we're going to get right into the meat of the presentation, which is the 5 signs that your workflow needs improving. We're going to talk about the 5 common barriers to efficient workflow. We're going to talk about some examples of things that we've seen out in the field. And then we're also going to share a little bit about some of the solutions that we've built to help you leverage against some of these challenges that are very common kind of across the board. And at the very end of the presentation, I will talk briefly about the free tools and resources that we're making available to everybody who would join today's webinar. This will be recorded, and we will be able to get you guys a link to the content at the end of probably by the end of the day today. All right. So real quick, Brian Wallace, that's me. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Kiefer. I'm in charge of kind of getting these webinars organized on a monthly basis. We cover a lot of different topics, and this month we're talking specifically about business workflow. We've done a few other presentations about business workflow as well, and you can actually find those on our YouTube channel to kind of see some past webinars and see some additional content. Today I'm joined by Nick Powell, who's one of our consultants. Hello, Nick. How are you? Good, good. So Nick has been here at Kiefer for how many years now? 7 years, and you've kind of done the whole gamut as it relates to consulting, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, right. So Nick is really kind of leading the charge right now with some of our simple solutions, which are some different solutions that we're building to help customers with some of the most common workflows, which we'll tackle today in today's presentation. We'll talk a little bit about some of those things. So I'm just going to leave you with 4 things to think, 4 things about Kiefer. I don't want to spend too much time here, but we've been in business for 30 years. We were established in 1988. Our president and CEO is Greg Kiefer. Some of you on the line may know him. Greg has a great reputation here in town. 80% of our business is mostly state and local government business, but we do have some higher profile private sector clients as well. But been in the business for 30 years. We are a Microsoft partner. We've got 20 of the best consultants in the industry. Our team is all full-time. They're benefited. We don't have staffing. Our teams are the ones that actually work alongside different teams that when we work on a consulting engagement, we're actually working right with the team on site. So it's kind of a nice model, and it seems to really work for us. A complete team. You're not just getting a development team, you're getting a team of analysts, project managers, as well as a technical team. We really do believe that the way to really build solutions and deliver for our clients is to provide the whole team rather than just one piece of it. We are a Microsoft managed partner, and you can see that we've got certifications, and we do have a strong partnership with Microsoft. So that's just a little bit about us. This is our portfolio, and as you see here, Kiefer Simple Solution Suite and process automation. Those are some really key things that we do as it relates to productivity, and those are the things we'll be talking about specifically today. All right, and we'll be using 2 Kiefer-built solutions to kind of help illustrate how we're working with clients and how we're improving processes, how we're helping them make a digital transformation, if you will, in some of these areas where the process is very manual or very paper-based. So we'll spend some time talking about that as well today. So the first sign that your workflow might be in need of improvement is visibility. And so if you ever find yourself asking the questions of where are the documents, who has the documents now, how long has it been in review or approve, or how long has it been with a reviewer or an approver, this might be a visibility problem. Nick, this is something common. I mean, this is something you guys see a lot out there.
This is probably one of the most common problems that we see with business processes, and honestly kind of the biggest gain that we get oftentimes from these process automation is the dashboard that we give. Mm-hmm. So the dashboard shows, like you said, who currently has this, how long has it been with them. So oftentimes when you have manual processes, you find that you have to get on the phone or walk around the office and try and figure out who actually has this right now, and why have I not heard anything about this for a week or 2 weeks? It should just be flowing through. So yeah, visibility is definitely a key component.
Yeah, I know that you guys have worked with a client where they had like very little information on how long it takes certain things to move through their process. When you guys did build like a dashboard or provided them with more visibility to the workflow, what kind of implication did that have for the client?
So they had a physical folder that they would print things out and stick the files in there, and they would literally walk it to a desk, and it would sit there for a day, 2 days, 2 weeks, depending on the person. You know, sometimes things get buried on your desk.
Right.
So when we got this going in SharePoint, they had that dashboard there for visibility, and they had some idea of about a rough average of how long these things took, and it was taking 5 to 6 weeks typically for them. Mm-hmm. And with getting it in the dashboard visibility, everyone in the agency can see that's been sitting with that person for, 4 days, what's taking them so long. It actually condensed it down to a 2-week time frame for them to be able to get this through.
Wow, that's huge. That's a huge gain. Without the good visibility, I think we kind of hit on some of these things. It's hard to identify how long the process takes. I know that some, in some situations where we work with clients, they can't tell you like, this particular process could take anywhere between 15 and 30 days because they don't know where the biggest bottlenecks are. So, as it is, as we mentioned here, is without that good visibility, it's hard to say where that bottleneck might be. And you can't definitively identify who's reviewing the document or item. One of the clients we worked with, they were tracking everything on a whiteboard. I don't know if Greg might have told you about this, but we worked with another client, and it was a whiteboard, and everything was on the whiteboard. So as far as visibility goes, you need to be able to get into that office to see that whiteboard to know exactly where things are. So that's kind of a crazy way to do it, but I think there's a lot of times where these processes have been done the same way for so long that that it doesn't seem like it's a broken process. It's just, that's how we do it here, right? So here's a example of that dashboard. Nick, you want to kind of go over this real quick? Maybe you can kind of give them a little bit of context for what the solution does.
Yeah, so this is a part of a PRA request solution. So PRA is pretty sensitive because of time frames. So really getting that visibility is a huge gain here to make sure that we know where all of our PRAs are, how long they've been out, and how long do we have left, because there are legal requirements for how long you have to respond to those. So this dashboard really gives you the flexibility to see, all right, who currently has this? When did we actually receive it? What stage are we in? And we have a remaining days there, which is going to update every day. And it's color coded. So I can see if it's green, we're looking great. If it's yellow, that means we've got a couple days left. We maybe need to put some focus on that. And if it's red, that means it's either due today or it's overdue. So we can do those kinds of things to really give you an easy visual cue right there on the dashboard. And what you can see on the right-hand side of that dashboard as well is really tracking, as a person who's involved in this process, what are the things that I have outstanding right now? So my tasks and all of our active tasks.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit about that too, and kind of going forward, because I think it's another one of the areas where we've identified that, when you can't see what's due to you, what you need to do, that's a huge gap, right? So sign number 2 is that your process is really manually driven. So if you have a process that are that's manual in nature, they're typically dependent upon what they call a serial review of the document. So essentially, manual process, if I have a document that needs to be approved, the way that it gets moved through my organization is that it's one up, one up, one up. I can't like have multiple people looking at it at any time. And then essentially, once I pass it to the person who's one approver above me, I can't tell where it is in the workflow. So, we've often encountered processes that require multiple staff members to review, approve, and route to numerous stakeholders across the organization. And this is a very common process. And a lot of times it's extremely manual. It's a folder, it's paper in a folder being moved from one person to the next. And this, again, is very common. A lot of times without a technology solution to drive it, this is the only way. And a lot of times it's because this is the process that, just like many others, gets very little, there's not a lot of heat and light on it. It's just the way we do things. They don't know that there's a better way to do it. This is the way things kind of this is what, we kind of get stuck with. So the manual process with the challenges, obviously it's hard to track where items are. Items will sit, maybe sit idle on somebody's desk, or they can get lost in the shuffle, especially when you're talking paper in a folder. I mean, it's really easy for that stuff to get misplaced. And it's extremely dependent upon somebody, approving it, reviewing it, approving it, and then moving it. So, I know this one here specifically worked on this project to work on one specific process, but the folder process is common, right, Nick?
Yeah,
yeah.
We've noticed that really across most state agencies, something very similar to that particular process.
Right. And it's different types of workflow. I mean, like we've seen it used for, like a paper and a folder for procurement, but it's also there's all kinds of different processes that run the same way, right?
Yep.
So this is an example of a way that we can kind of help leverage against some of that is this electronic routing of the information. And this is, Nick, you want to talk a little bit, so this is the review and approve solution and kind of the idea behind how this works.
So the review and approve solution, really it's about putting in a list of approvers, and it's going to run through those approvers in a serial fashion. And so this kind of goes into it kind of covers a lot of aspects of the benefits of automating these things. First of all, when you've got a manual process, you really don't know where things are, like Brian mentioned. And the other thing is, if we're doing it manual every time, we don't really have a standardized process. No two people are really doing it exactly the same way. So when we get things like this with the electronic routing and automation, really what we're doing is standardizing the process. So everyone who is an input to that process and has any involvement in that process, really following the same thing every time, and we've got that accountability and visibility because everything's right there in SharePoint.
Cool. And this one here is showing kind of like you kind of see that email that's kind of in the back there, but essentially what's happening here is it's routing and it's notifying them at the same time.
Yeah. So when one of these you can see there's a list of approvers and then who it's currently assigned to. So that person it's assigned to would receive an email, and they're going to get a task that they need to do. So they're going to come in here, they're going to look at this list of documents, perform their reviews, and then they're going to approve it, or they can also send it back to the previous approver if they would like. And so really you get kind of that tracking of who has it now, who has already approved it, who's yet to approve it, and the flexibility to add additional approvers in there as well as you go.
Great. All right, so we'll go over to the next one here. Sign number 3 that the process may be in need of an improvement is your lack of notification. So we just talked about the email kind of notifying somebody that they had something to approve. But this is common, right? These we kind of threw out some of these common things you might hear. I didn't know you were waiting for me. I missed your email. I didn't know you needed my approval. This is really common because it is so easy for this kind of stuff when you're doing even if you're doing a electronic approval, right? For things to kind of get lost in the shuffle. What's cool about the way that some of these solutions have been built is that when you have a dashboard, you know exactly who it's with at any given time. So you can kind of leverage against some of this. I'm going to move through here. that was the dashboard here. You talked a little about these before, but the convenience here of being able to see what you need to be, what needs your attention. So, I mean, the alternative here is that it sits in an inbox and it waits for you. But the better thing here is that when you can go to the dashboard and just take a quick look and see what things you need to be working on. I mean, that obviously is the benefit. The other thing too is the all active tasks. From like an administrator standpoint, you know, what kind of benefit have you seen there?
So oftentimes with these processes, we have a person who's kind of the shepherd or the owner of that process that really drives things through. So my task is great as someone who gets these things assigned to him. I can go in, okay, I have 4 tasks that I need to go through for this process. All active tasks allows that sort of overall person who's monitoring the entire thing to look at that and say, hey, why does that user have 12 things sitting with them that have been with them for a few days? Maybe I need to figure out if that person is maybe out on vacation. And
right.
so that now we just have this huge bottleneck. Maybe we need to get those things reassigned out to different people. So all active tasks gives you that visibility to see where your bottlenecks might be. We've got a lot of these outstanding tasks with one particular person. Let's figure out why that's the case.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because now with something like this, a dashboard, you have another layer of like intelligence around how processes really work. I mean, it's hard to say how do you improve a process if you've never measured it before, but a dashboard gives you that flexibility to at least get a measurement on how is my process working, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And when you sit down, we'll actually talk about this a little bit later too, but you know, a lot of times you guys are taking information from the client based on today's workflow looks like this. Let's just make it electronic, right? That's the first step. Then it's about taking a look at, well, now that we've made this process a digital process, is it efficient, right? Have you guys had experience where you said, okay, let's take a process as is, make it digital, and then look at it later and say, you know, maybe there was work that we need to do to the process before we just made it digital.
Yeah, so the solution we've been talking about with the client where they had a physical folder they walked around. So that one, we met with them, we got a good understanding of what their process is. We modeled that process and sort of started identifying some pain points to try and account for those in the design. We built out the workflow, they started using it, and we really started seeing, okay, well, there's also these bottlenecks, things that they kind of didn't know were a problem because they had some lack of standardization. So kind of going back to what I was saying before, with the manual process, no 2 people were doing it exactly the same way. So we kind of get it standardized, get all those people using it the same way. And you can really start to see, like Brian said, with the dashboard, we can get some analytics to say, well, this particular stage is taking us 8 days while the other stages are taking us 2 or 3. What can we do to solve that issue or work around that issue so that we can get rid of those bottlenecks? So it's really kind of an iterative process for that type of thing.
That makes sense. I've heard Andy say it, there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and then there's one way.
The same way.
The same way, right? That's what he says. Let's just do it all the same way first, and then we'll figure out which way is the right or the wrong way.
As long as everybody's doing it the same way, we can move toward the right way from there.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So task and email notifications. So this is kind of that whole how your tasks get assigned to you, right? So this is via email, and then it comes up as like essentially a form, right? So
correct. Yeah. So you get
try to make it easier on the user.
Exactly. Yeah. So you get an email in your inbox, and it's going to have some instructions on what you need to do, links to get you to the places you need to be. So, for example, what you're seeing in the screenshot here is part of the PRA request process. So I'm going to get an email with some instructions here. It's going to take me to a link where I can get to all the documents or the area where I need to load documents in if I'm one of the people who's collecting the data for that PRA request. And then I have a task where I'm asked to put some comments in and things like that, which really give us kind of the running log of what all has happened throughout a process. So you can see that kind of thing going on here in the task form.
So slide number 4, we're getting close, so we're doing pretty well here on time. And so one of the things here that we see very common is a lack of collaboration, places to collaborate, or at which creates that sluggish review process. This is a, common thing here, where you see people emailing a document around for review, and it's, labeled final _2, right? But, you get too many versions that are starting to circulate in an organization, and it's hard to determine which one is the right one. And I think this is really common. We hear this from clients all the time. And, we're a big SharePoint shop. We're big believers in the SharePoint platform, because then we can actually have one document that everybody can collaborate on, that never has to circulate, never has to go, basically route to anybody through email. We can check out all the changes, we can see all the versions. So one of the big issues that we see with workflows is that lack of collaboration, the fact that there's no single source of truth, and then I don't know, this has got to be one of the worst kind of responsibilities when you have a lot of reviewers or a lot of approvers, is that being that one point of contact who's aggregating all the changes, because it's hard to tell if you're working on the right version. It's hard to say if there's been changes that maybe Nick suggested to one section, I made different recommendations for changes. So now we've got more review and more outreach that we have to do to the stakeholders. So this is a really common issue, and one that we can really kind of address with SharePoint. And then, like you see here, this is the documents here are sitting in the SharePoint platform with reviewers or approvers listed here. But these documents, it's one document, right, Nick? I mean, this, what we're looking at is
correct. So there's one document, single source of truth. And the great thing is, rather than, if I am asking 4 people to review this document and maybe they're going to make some changes, if I attach that document in an email to those 4 people and all 4 of them make their changes and send it back to me, now I have 4 unique documents, and I have to manually figure out what it is they changed and wrap that all together in one doc. Whereas with the platform here in SharePoint, everyone's going to one spot, everyone's working on one document. We can even collaborate on that document together at the same time. And any changes that are made there, the next person who opens it is going to see the updated copy of that. So I don't have sort of disparate copies of my document out there, not sure of which one's the newest. Every time anyone goes here, they're going to see the newest version of that document.
Right. So essentially what's been achieved here with this review and approve solution is, I used to take a document, put it in a folder, route it around, and have people sign it or review it or make changes to it. Now what I've done is I've basically taken an electronic document, got it to the first person, allowed them to make whatever changes they want. It gets routed. Everybody gets notified electronically that this thing is now in their queue. They can see the changes, make changes on the same document. Nobody's having to come back and pull all this information.
Exactly. There's no sort of aggregation of all the changes at the very end.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. And this one here is really cool. I had to throw this in here because I've seen you show this before with PRA, is that when we get this question too, is in the review process, to be able to have some way to record everybody's input along the way. So this, you want to talk a little bit about the comment log?
So this is our comment log that's a part of that PRA request process. So really that process takes us through a number of steps, and there are various roles associated who are part of making those steps happen. And so what you see with the comment log here is, at every stage, someone receives a task. That could be what we call the PRA admin. It could be the group of people who actually have to go out and capture the relevant documents for that. It could be legal. So there's various roles that are associated. Each of them gets a task. When they complete their task, they are asked to leave a comment. So what you can see here in this comment log is what stage were we at, so data capture, the person who submitted that and finished their task, what comment did they leave, who was it that left it, and when did they leave it. So really what you get here is you start to see a running log of these are all of the actions that were taken throughout this one particular process. So for this PRA request, we can see when data capture was completed, when the content review was completed, when legal review was completed, and any notes that they decided to leave there in that form as well.
That's great. I love that. That's a cool feature. And I know that was one that I know when we built it into the solution, I know we had some recommendation from clients, but to really see it kind of come to take shape like this, I think a lot of folks are really enthusiastic about it. Now, sign number 5 is the most, I think we hear this a lot, that when the users are just, this is when you really know you need to do some work on your workflows, when your users just hate it. And, many solutions, are built without users participating in the process. Or the processes have changed over time, but the way that they've always done it doesn't support the change in how they do things. So it makes it really challenging for a lot of users. So this is our first step in any engagement, is to really sit down with the users and understand the workflow. I mean, this is a big part of what you do in every one of your engagements. So I don't know, I think we have a slide here about soliciting user input. I mean, what's kind of the way we do that?
Yeah, so it's kind of going back to some of the stuff we talked about before with, taking the stuff we get from the dashboard and getting an idea of where are our bottlenecks. So really part of this is, yeah, oftentimes users don't like the process that they have. Sometimes it's because it's just clunky because of the tools they have or don't have, so they're kind of locked into certain ways of doing things. Or sometimes it's because that's just how we've done it for the past 10 or 15 years, so that's what we do.
Right.
And so part of this, again, is the first step is let's understand what your process is, and then let's understand what are those things you don't like about it. What are the pain points and challenges that you have today? What are we trying to accomplish with this? We don't want to automate and standardize a bad process, so we do want to make some improvements to the process to try and get around those challenges that the agencies have with their processes today. So really, again, it's about understanding the process, understanding the problems they have with that process, and overcoming those challenges with whatever it is that we put into a solution for them.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, one of the things that, Andy, who's one of our other consultants who actually has done a couple webinars on business process, one of the things he mentioned in one of his other webinars was that he worked with a client who was, just fixated on taking a process that was 30 days down to half that time, 15 days. And one of the things that he learned is when he started talking to users was, this is going to be a challenge because the way that they review things is in a very serial fashion with a certain amount of time given for each step. And the thing is that there were so many approvers, and that basically the best that they could do is 28 days. Like, we can basically get the process down like 2 days if we make a few changes here and there. But getting down to 15 was just not going to happen because it wouldn't work for legal to review something that accounting hadn't reviewed first. Like, there was a plan to, like, maybe we just have folks reviewing at the same time. It was like, no, I don't want to see it until everybody else has seen it. So there's a lot we can learn by sitting down with the users and understanding how they work, right? I mean, it's easy to throw out there a number and say, let's take it from 30 to 15, but, really until you understand what's really happening, you can't do that.
Exactly.
Right. So, we really do have this goal of helping clients improve the process. And we talked about two specific ones today, the RPA and the red folder, ones that the red folder process, or what we call the review and approve process. We talked about a few of those today, which was great, but I think every client has their own types of workflows. But if you have any characteristics that marry up with what we talked about today, where you have workflow where it's hard to tell where things are in your process, so you have a visibility issue, or if you are manually routing things, or if you don't have any way to automatically notify an approver that it's time for them to review or approve a document. If you can't collaborate, if you really have version final v2 _ final, and that's the kind of stuff that you guys are passing around, there's an opportunity to improve that process. And the key here, and I think one of the things that we've learned a ton from, is the dashboard. The dashboard being able to give us some real-time information on where things are in the workflow, how well is our workflow working, is a huge benefit. And we can help clients build those dashboards to facilitate that. So in the end, we're accelerating processes because we're layering in that technology, but we're also improving operational efficiency kind of across the board. So these are things that you know, if you have specific things that you're working on and workflow that you would like to see improved, let's talk about it, because it may not be ones that we're familiar with, but if it has characteristics common to these, then it's ones we can help you build, help you improve. Kiefer has a broad portfolio of offerings. We kind of talked about that before, but these two things that we talked about today, specifically review and approve and PRA, fit right into our workflow solutions that are our simple solution suite. Again, we have more of these simple solutions that we can actually offer clients as well. We did send out a couple things, and if you haven't got them yet, you will be getting them. One is the Consultant's Notebook. This is a helpful tool for organizations that are looking to transform your business process. It's very common. It takes basically common scenarios. It kind of explains how to leverage against some of the challenges to, you know, true business transformation. And then we also have some free infographics that we sent along that kind of outline best practices for business process optimization. You can always reach out to us at any time. You guys have my email. It's Brian Wallace. You get email from me all the time. You can always respond to me for specific things, and I'd love to send them your way. We do have a couple minutes for questions and answers, and I don't see any questions in the panel right now. It's very rare that we do get questions on the call here, but we do get questions later. And I do, like I said, I am open to you guys reaching out to us at a later time and asking us questions. Again, we can get you copies of this presentation, and we will have some of this stuff available on our YouTube channel. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and any feedback you have for us, please send it my way. I do appreciate it, and we stayed within our 35-minute range, and I do appreciate. Thanks, Nick, for stepping out and coming in and helping us out with this today. A little do the folks on the phone know that we had some technical difficulties. You bailed me out of as well, so I do appreciate that. But look forward to catching up with you guys again, and we will be again. We do these every month. So do look for our next webinar, which will be held kind of later in the month in July. So thanks a lot.
Thanks.